I'm an Ulster boy, which is what Northern Ireland comes from. My father had a small building business of his own, and I think he wanted me to join him. So I went to Queen's University, Belfast. Third year, I had a course in soil mechanics. The professor there at the time was a strange guy. He'd had experience in Soil Mechanics Limited in London. He was doing research on the bearing capacity of foundations and piles on sand. He wasn't a very good teacher. He really was not a good teacher. He was a great educator, though. He told us to go off and learn by ourselves, and was asked to come back and do a research program for a PhD. The first challenge I had was, after I got my PhD, knowing what to do afterwards. I was very fortunate. I got an opportunity to go to the Norwegian Geotechnical Institute in Oslo from Belfast. And for me, that was a big stretch. And I remember one day in particular at the NGI, the Norwegian Institute, we had coffee in the afternoon, and I was with another Canadian guy, and we suddenly had the idea that pre-consolidation pressure in clays is a yield condition in many other disciplines. And not only was it present in consolidation odometer testing, one-dimensional compression, but it was also present in shear, whenever clays in particular were shearing. And so that gave us the idea of yielding, that eventually led to experimental work in the laboratory to produce yield loci and the whole idea of yield behavior, leading to the adoption of critical state soil mechanics, which was done somewhere else. All civil engineering projects have a ground connection. Geotechnical engineering, called soil mechanics in the beginning, is pretty new. And we had a major period of expansion in about the 1960s, 1970s. When we got to the productivity stage, then little more research needed to be done. Because there's a saying that we have in research which says that we know more and more about less and less until we know everything about nothing. Thinking about geochemistry, which was very strong in the 80s and 90s maybe, some very good people in Canada, and I'm not seeing very much of that anymore. Geological engineering, I'm just disappointed that so many of our graduate students in geotechnical engineering and civil engineering know so little geology. Earthquake analysis has been strong. Some of the leaders in Canada have unfortunately died, and there are people now in practice who are working, of course, on earthquakes, but I suspect that more work is needed in that area. When I started in the 60s, there were no women in engineering, at least in my university and many others, I think. There were some in senior positions, but relatively small, and they may have come over from science rather than coming through a straight engineering stream. Soils engineering at the time was very macho, very masculine. Gradually that has changed. I remember the first women students that we had here having to deal with it and accept them, understand how the women think, which is sometimes a bit different from the way the men think, and come to decisions and so on. And then having a daughter of my own sure helped in that process. But they have made a major impact. I also see some trend towards concentration of interest in some areas. The ones that I see, perhaps wrongly, but the ones that I think I see are in geo-environmental engineering, interest in climate change, global warming, highways and so on, permafrost engineering. There are people who are very good in that.